Welcome back to Hawkeye Skunk Works. Today we are going to do some minor electrical mods on my 05 4th gen 4Runner. Things to make life just a little bit easier, in my opinion. From what I have read in doing the research for these mods, which of course I will leave links down below for write-ups and other videos that I use to help get me to this point. A lot of these mods will span over different Toyota models and different years, almost 100% the same. So even if you don't have a 4th gen 4Runner, you may want to watch this video, see what it takes, and then follow the links down below and go from there on your specific vehicle. First off, we are going to pull the dome lights out of the front. When you open the doors, the front map lights don't turn on. They're push button activated only, and that's super annoying, in my opinion, to not have some courtesy light up front. So we are going to pull that console out and then very easily put a little bit of wiring in so that every time you open any of the doors, those lights will turn on, and you'll still be able to turn them on by pushing them as well. So let's hop in and pull that out. Before we get too in depth on pulling this out, I want to let you guys know that doing the mod the way that I've got it laid out, when you go to push these dome lights to turn them on after the doors are closed, pushing one will turn both of them on and turning off, vice versa. So if that's going to be an issue for you, you're going to want to run separate wiring for each one instead of tying them in together. I kind of actually prefer it that way. So to pull this out is really easy. You're going to reach towards the front of the vehicle, grab that, pull it down, and then you're going to pull it towards the front of the vehicle. These white clips aren't actually clips, they're kind of just fingers that hold it into place. So you'll rotate that down and out, and then there's also one harness here that you will unplug and pull that out. Now, the part that has the clips on it is actually the inside, the backing for the sunglass holder, and that stayed and the rest of my shroud came off. It's not a big deal. They're just plastic welded together in 4 different spots. Now you can either glue that back together or get out your soldering iron and melt it all back together, which is what I did. Alright, so I'm going to show you guys what I've got going on here. I had a little bit more step-by-step, but some of my video got corrupted, so bear with me. Here is the switch that we are after. There's one on each side. It just pops right out, really easy. There are 2 brass pins going into it that you'll see. We are after the one that is more towards the center, so as this sits in the vehicle, we want the pin that is more towards the rear. That's where we're going to supply power to when the door opens. So all I've done is taken some really small wire and I've stripped it, and I've actually fed it in to the switch where that post goes, and then I've put the switch back on over the post to hold the piece of wire. There's not a lot of real estate in there to use. I would have liked to have soldered. If you guys got better ideas, please let me know. And then I've held all the wiring in place with a little bit of hot glue, and then I've put a heat shrink connector here. You guys have seen me use those before. They work really well, and you also saw me using in the video there this torch. I got this as a gift. It works really well. I usually use a heat gun on those connectors, but I can localize the heat a little bit better with this. Just be careful not to burn through anything. A little extra heat shrink tubing over the top of that, and then I've added a post connector here so that I can still remove this whole unit out of the ceiling after I've installed the rest of the wiring. The next thing we are going to do over in the driver's A-pillar, we're going to take a small flathead screwdriver and we are going to pry up these little caps on the grab handle here. Careful not to fling them everywhere. And then we are going to take a 10 mil so we can remove the grab handle here. Or it looks like these ones are actually Phillips as well, so you could use a Phillips. And then to remove this, it just kind of comes away. It's not super hard to pull out. There's not really any clips per se in there. There's alignment tabs, and then the screws hold it in place. That was my the mic for my stereo for the hands-free. And then we want to get into this pink wrapped harness here. The wire that we're after is a flat white wire that actually has 3 wires running through it. And so now that we've located that wire, we're just going to take a razor blade, and we want to isolate the middle wire. Now obviously be careful not to nick any of the other wires. This is the wire that feeds power to the rest of the courtesy lights. So you can see now I've run my wiring, and I've used a I don't actually know what those things are called, little crimp connector that you put on with a plier. I am really not a fan of these things, but there is a time and a place to use them, and this is one of those times. And unfortunately, the next thing I'm going to show you is another one of those times, but they will be fine because they're going to be inside, not exposed to the elements, and they're not going to be moving around. So that's all connected, and we are good to go. Time to just put the trim back together. Now on to the next mod. Well, actually, earlier I mentioned that the way that those dome lights are wired up now, that if you push one, both of the front ones will come on. What I didn't realize, and I should have realized, is if you push one of those lights, all of the dome lights turn on, which isn't a huge deal. I've always come from other vehicles, the Ford and the Jeep. They always have a dome light switch that will turn all of them on anyway. The only negative to that is if it's nighttime and you've got kids in the back that are asleep and you need to turn out your front lights on, front dome light on, it's going to turn all of them on. There are other ways to wire that up. There's other write-ups. I may do a little bit more research into that and see if that's something I want to change in the future, but for now we're going to leave it alone. The TPMS, I am going to be running different wheels on this, obviously, and I don't want the TPMS sensors on there anymore. For one, because I don't care about it. All it is a warning light on the dash. Maybe if it told me exactly which tire was low, right on the dash, it would be convenient. I'm pretty good about keeping up with checking my tire pressure just anyway. And I also plan on doing something that I've never done before with this wheel and tire setup. I'm going to run balancing beads, and those can interfere with the sensors. So we're going to get rid of that. It's a really super easy mod to bypass this. So we are going to jump in there and do it. We are underneath the glove box. There is a plastic shroud that has one screw holding it in place. You'll pull that screw out with either a Phillips or a 10 mil, pop it down. There's just some yellow clips, and on the back there is this brown box. Now this brown box has a connector that you're going to pull out, and you're going to have to pull back the wrapping on it. We are looking for a white and black wire and a pink and black wire. And all we are going to do is connect those two together, and that's going to ground, well, essentially ground out the system and fool it into thinking that it is always working. And there we have the connector in place. I did trim a little plastic out of the inside of that connector because those are intended for one of the wires to be have an end on it. So I just crimped those together. We're going to plug it back in and put this panel back together and move on to our next mod.